a rezoning if the easement were to proceed. He's also looking in that map, if you see the outlined parcels in red, he's looking at building some storage units on those parcels outlined in red, kind of on the lower left of the map in that rectangular shape. And that would also require a rezone change.
Okay, so I'm still a little confused. When I look at the big map where it shows County Road 3 to the left, and then Kennedy Road, the light-colored section where Kennedy Road is written, that's the tax forfeited land, correct?
Correct. Therese, could you bring that map up? Yeah, so that parcel there in the middle with no fill is the tax forfeited parcel. And the first half of it there is Kennedy Road. The second half of it, where it gets real skinny, is kind of just a brushed in trail, and it's only about 20 feet wide. And that whole parcel is where he's looking to get the easement across.
So the part that's more red to the, I guess, on the upside of the Kennedy Road section, is that the property he's purchasing, or is it the property way to the right?
Both.
Both, okay.
Yep.
I have no other questions. Commissioner Hoag?
What about that little piece to the west before Kennedy Road?
Eric owns that piece as well.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Franzine?
Are there any snowmobile trails on here? There used to be. Are they still there?
There used to be. It was rerouted in the past, so there's no current snowmobile trails on this parcel.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Coring, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I've got no question. You know what? I guess I do have a question. Therese, is the map, was that sent on Friday? I'm looking through it a couple of times over, and I don't see that map that you just had up on the screen.
Yes, all three maps were in the packet on Friday.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Brecken?
if I can ask, Ryan, is that the only tax forfeit property is what is outlined in that lighter color?
Correct. In that whole area, it's just that one small sliver parcel that's tax forfeited.
Would he be interested in purchasing that property?
He might be, but that property also provides access to a bunch of those lots to the south. And so, in the past, when we've had these tax forfeited parcels over roads, we have sold them or given them to townships just to avoid blocking access off to anyone. But in this case, with first assessment, we can't really do that. So we do think an easement would probably be the best route, unless there was like a agreement maybe amongst all the landowners in that area that would like to collectively purchase. That could be an option too.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Franzine?
I have a question. I know it accesses houses up and down that easement right now. Why can't he just use the same easement? I mean, I don't understand, I guess, because I do know Woodens live back here, and there's a few other people that live back on this road. Do they have easements, or how does that work? And if they don't, why does he need an easement? And if there's already an easement there, can you just explain this a little bit better?
Yeah, so it's currently open for the public to use just because it's an existing tax forfeited parcel and it has an existing road. So I'm not sure if anybody has an easement, but they wouldn't be required to have one to use it. I know Eric is looking at improving the road and running electric and gas utilities probably under the road. And so he would need an official easement to do those activities.
Commissioner Franzine?
Now, if he got an easement for this, could he stop the other people from using this easement that they've always used?
No, the easement would be open to the public.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions, concerns? Looks like it's a go. I want to take one quick second and apologize to you, Ryan. I thought it was Attorney Ryan that was going to be handling this because it just said Ryan on here. And so I was a little confused, which isn't a very difficult thing for me to become. But I apologize for recognizing Mr. Ryan and Mr. Ryan. So I apologize.
No problem. Well, it sounds like we'll go ahead and put this on the agenda for next week's board meeting, if that's all right.
Yes.
Because this is a main highway, so if they want to put storage units on Highway 3, I don't have a problem.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
All right, thank you.
Second order of business. We got a blade update from Ms. Terry, Mr. Gallus, and Mr. Lewick. Welcome. And I forget, Andy, is it captain now? What- Okay, I want to note that. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I think as some of you know, we started BLADE, Brainerd Lakes Area Drug Education, back in probably early 2019. And am I going to be able to switch this? Yeah, there we go. And we did a large community forum, kind of a brainstorming session, and I think we had a little under 100 people in attendance. But it's kind of been interesting to look back because these were the large words, are the words that were said either multiple times and or by multiple people during that event. And they're really kind of holding true to what we're working on with BLADE. Prevention, awareness, education, treatment, access and availability, support, making connections in the community. You see words up there like peer and resources and breaking cycles. And that really is kind of interesting to look back at as we move forward with our coalition. The mission of BLADE is to prevent substance misuse, protect our people, and preserve our community. We really felt that we needed to change the way we were addressing our drug problem in our community, and we thought that that started by recognizing what was working, what was not working, and what was missing. And that's really led to what the coalition has been working towards. We needed the community's input and involvement to address this problem. The local coalition, we've been working to strengthen that over the course of this last year. But the local coalition includes our local law enforcement, area schools, our healthcare providers, our recovery community, obviously our government services here at the county, youth serving organizations, the faith community, businesses, youth, and other interested community members. We seek to prevent and reduce substance misuse and increase our public awareness, support impacted individuals and their families so that we have a safe community for all. And now we'll move into our work plan from this past year.
So I believe this is in your handouts. It's a little tough to read on the PowerPoint, but even though, or regardless of, the pandemic, we were able to accomplish quite a lot with BLADE, although maybe not quite as much as we wanted to. So we have a number of participants on our task force, as you can see on the right, who's involved. Law enforcement, community services, area schools, we have faith community members. The recovery community, we have including some youth or a youth who's involved. We are looking, however, for one person from our business community and one person from a service group, so like a Kiwanis or a Lions group. We need representation from those two groups. So if you know of anybody who might be interested, please pass on the information. And they can connect with either Tammy or I or Captain Gallus. So we were able to accomplish quite a lot. We actually talked a lot with the school members to see kind of what they had and what they needed, and we happened upon Know the Truth, which is a curriculum offered by Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. And they actually have a program that has been developed and has been implemented in a number of school districts that we were able to potentially bring to our school districts. That is part of our work plan for 2021, is to get that up and running. We were able to host virtual events for community members to attend. Know the Truth was the main facilitator of our last one. And one of the handouts that you received that's not a part of the PowerPoint is the Trends Survey. So Know the Truth actually sent out a survey for students and parents to complete within Crow Wing County, and you can see some of the details from that survey. I won't go through all of them. But one important one, 28% of those surveyed admitted to using drugs and/or alcohol at least once amongst our student population. And you know, you kind of think, well, gosh, everybody's doing it or everybody's trying it, but really, in reality, only 28% of students reported actually using or trying substances. So it's not quite as bad as we might think it is. And that's kind of our messaging, right? That while you think everyone's doing it, not necessarily. And so trying to focus on those not the 28% who are doing it, but the 72%, I had to get my math right this morning, that aren't doing it. And so focus on that positive side as opposed to the potential negative side. So we were able to survey parents and students as a part of our work. And then a number of other pieces that we've accomplished in 2020. I certainly don't need to read it to you from the slide. We do have a work plan for 2021. That was part of your handouts as well. So as I mentioned, we're working to get Know the Truth into the schools. We had a really good meeting this last meeting, and we're able to identify some contacts, a contact list to get some Know the Truth information deeper into the schools. They got a lot of stuff going on, and so how do we connect with the people who are providing this education directly? So we'll be rolling out that information to them soon. We're also looking at hosting additional virtual forums in 2021, and partnering again with Know the Truth, but also, you know, figuring out some trainings that we're doing and additional information that we can share as a Blade group. And then we want to just give you an update, or Captain Gallus will, on one of the things that we did this last year with our calendar contest.
So we set out, obviously 2020 set us back because of COVID. It really hampered our efforts and such. So we said, what can we do in a virtual format? And it had been talked about late in 2019, and it carried over into 2020, a calendar contest. In fact, County Attorney Ryan had suggested that from the old DARE model from back in the 80s, and we just kind of built off of that with our own.
1 second. Somebody's phone.
No, it was my computer.
Like a little music, you know. So anyway, we took that and based on our coalition, we kind of set out and said, what is the best way to roll out a coloring contest in modern day? Mental health obviously is huge into substance abuse, and the research points to when we get to elementary age students and we can offer that education, that support system, avenues for them to channel frustration. And obviously, you know, there's much more stress on that age group in today's era than it was back in the 80s. So we set out and said, all right, all of our local schools, private schools, even home schools, public schools, draw us, if you're interested in entering our contest, draw us a picture of something that makes you feel basically safe, happy, or you doing something good for somebody else. And I think we had just north of 60 entries, something in that ballpark. Again, a little hard to roll out this year with COVID, distance learning, and everything else. We tried to do our best to get that out there. We were happy, though. We got 60-plus entries the first go-around with it, and I provided you each with a copy of that calendar, and it really represents every district, I think, in the county school district and all that. We had one homeschool student from the Crosby area, which was nice to see, some Pequot students, and obviously some Brainerd School District students. And we were able to put that into a calendar format, and as you can see in the photos, we're able to go around and showcase their artwork. They were awarded with a Blade and a Operation Community Connect hooded sweatshirt as a prize, and also an electronic drawing pad to kind of boost their interest and creativity, and continue the positivity in these trying times, I guess. So, we had kindergarteners all the way up to 7th grade enter our contest, so that was really nice to see the young kids in there. And yeah, so we're hoping to build on that into next year. I think we've got some good momentum going into it, and hopefully the fair happens this year so we can get some of these things out and some more ideas from our community to say, what is the best direction for Blade? And obviously Know the Truth is going to be a huge step in the right direction for our ultimate goal, and that's education at a young age to hopefully realize the substance abuse reduction later in life.
Very good. I'll just say one thing about the calendar. As I look through there, there's a lot more art ability in those kids than there ever was in me at the 4th grade level, 5th grade level, I don't care what level.
I would agree with you, sir.
As a senior citizen, I don't have that ability. So it's interesting to see their interpretation of the different things. And I just happened to look at the one about the library, which is a stack of colors going up, and the perception of what a library is. So it was interesting to see how they all brought out their feelings or the things that they felt were important or safe to them. So I appreciate that. I think it was a good way to engage them. I think it'll grow. I think kids look for the opportunities to express themselves, and I think this is a good one. To you two, question for you, 28% versus 72%. Is the idea, and to you too, Captain, is the idea that we look at the 72% and we promote that idea that because when there's peer pressure, everybody's doing it. And that's not the case. So if we focus on 72%, then I know my buddies aren't necessarily doing it, even though that one person might say that. Is that the kind of the rationale for focusing on the 72 versus the 28?
That's exactly right, and we're actually going to recruit you, so now you can speak to it, because that was perfectly said. In the past, we've always taken that sort of negative approach, right? Where, oh my gosh, 28% of the kiddos are using substances in the community, but really focusing on those positive community norms as opposed to the negativity and furthering that message.
Yeah, and I think I would just add that, it's not to ignore either, that we care about that 28% too that are choosing to use. Sure. And what are we providing to them or to their parents so that they can have open dialogue and conversation, which is a piece of Know the Truth that is a component that they have where they have individuals in recovery that speak to youth and kind of speak about how they got started and what kind of led to their use, and then kind of how it went from there. So, I think, yes, we want to be focused on that 72% and the positive choices and thinking that is going on and what they're doing to maybe choose not to use, but we also want to really work with that, with those 28% too, like we have, but then continue to provide support and resources to them as well.
The peer pressure tends to make one feel like they're isolated and they're the only one not doing it, when in fact 3 out of 4 of my buddies aren't doing it. So I have a lot of support, is what I was thinking.
Yep, exactly.
And so I'm not standing on an island by myself.
Right.
Any questions, concerns from the other commissioners?
Yeah, Mr.
Breck?
Chair, if I can, with the way this distance learning has been, what are you anticipating once kids get back in school? Because I think, we've obviously seen, we've read the increased use of alcohol in homes. You're seeing more domestic violence. What do you, do you think there's going to kind of be a wave when kids kind of get back in school and you're going to be able to see them and find out what's kind of going on at home?
Yeah, that was what was also nice about our fall virtual session that we did with the community. Officer Kate Peterson, I believe that's right, up in Pequot Lakes, talked about, what to be looking for in the home, what parents needed to be, that even more now than ever, they needed to be really diligent about, making sure their kids were doing okay and making sure they knew what their kids were doing. But yeah, as these kids start to return back to school, and even what they've been seeing at home with their parents, potentially increased use and that sort of thing. So That was another reason that we continue to kind of push, even though we know the schools have a lot on their plate, that we are working with Know the Truth to put these toolkits in the hands of our health teachers and our counselors within the schools so that they can start to utilize the materials that are being offered by Know the Truth. And Know the Truth has offered to be a part of presentations, virtual presentations, or come on site. So we're really trying to make it really easy for our local schools to bring in these staff and get those programs rolling, because we know how important it is.
And with Know the Truth too, they have texting that students can text directly to some of the, they're not counselors, but.
Certified probably peer
Yeah, the peer recovery specialists who have been through it, kind of walked through that journey. And then they also offer, right now they're virtual peer groups, but bringing a group of kiddos together to talk through some life choices and things like that, or how to support them on positive, healthy choices. Tammy, do you want to share that data of just kind of the trends that we saw?
Oh, yeah, we just got our DANES data from 19, but, and I think you guys maybe remember when we came and we had said that meth had surpassed alcohol, and it was the first time that had occurred. Back in 2016, we started to see that. We did see in 2019, we are seeing a slight reduction in meth. So this is people what they report their substance use as they enter treatment. So we did see a slight decline, but alcohol is also rising. So so that's going back up, and meth is coming down. And we did have also entering treatment. We had about a 13% increase in those entering treatment from 2018 to 2019.
So part of this that kind of stinks is that we're a year behind, right?
Always with this data.
But we kind of see the trend and can know of some ways to potentially address or know what's coming down the pipe.
You also touched on mental health, and I really think this Know the Truth right now in what's going on, in our world is probably a really good tagline. But the issue of social media, and there is kind of a documentary out there called Social Dilemma. And how is this, it's going to be a big challenge of what's going on there and really knowing what information these young people are getting and how they're dealing with it and handling it.
I think that was also another piece that I like about the Know the Truth format or form, is that not only are they bringing in their expertise and then those with lived experience, but then they partnered with our local community. So we had our local law enforcement as a part of the panel, our collaborative workers, some of our area treatment providers, and I think that's another thing that I really like, that they bring in kind of the whole piece or the whole picture for the people that are getting the education, and because I think you're right, it's there's so much going on in this, an individual's mental health and maybe what leads to their use, or it's maybe the family dynamics, trauma in the home. So we have to be kind of looking at it from all angles.
Yep, and we're just seeing that, again, the social media is really, being called out now.
If I could just comment too, Commissioner Brecken, I think you make a valid point. There's a whole bunch of unknown coming out of COVID and distance learning, and I don't think anybody has what the answer is going to be whenever we get back to whatever normal looks like in 2021 or even beyond. But Know the Truth and collaboration, if you turn to the back of your calendar, you can see all the different partners in our coalition that we have. But I would argue that one of the biggest contributors we have to our coalition is brought by Know the Truth and our local lived community. They're the subject matter experts in substance abuse. We lean heavily on them, and I think we're going to continue to do that. Unfortunately, we had this setback in 2020. I keep referring to that, but it's real. And in substance abuse and the work that we do in law enforcement and community services, that's a huge, a year is like, an eternity in the substance abuse world. So I think we realize that we're going to have a little bit of a setback, but I think there's a lot of optimism towards, what this fall and, schools, maybe even this spring, getting back into the schools. We'll see how we do.
Yeah. Just one check out, Rotary usually has high school students, and they have a program over there that maybe that would be a way to get them actually more engaged.
Absolutely. And then just something else that I'll mention, we hadn't quite formalized a communication group, and we've recently been meeting. We're partnering with Crowing Energized and their communication group, because they really have a good plan down. And so how do we have them help us communicate, to your point, Commissioner Brecken, about social media? You know, I'm kind of old and I don't really have a lot of social media skill. So how do we tap into those who do have that type of skill, and engaging younger folk around getting our message out too? So that's super important to us as well.
Anything else from commissioners? Commissioner Coring?
Mr. Chairman, just thank you to the staff and Captain Gallus for their hard work. I appreciate it very much.
And I'll also say thank you, and I would say thank you to all the individuals and groups that are collaborating. I think this is a great effort. I think it has the potential to really impact our young people, and in the long haul to impact community services budget and the sheriff's budget, which we're always concerned about. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll look for a business and service group partner for you.
Thank you.
Next
is our CHIPS TPR commitment attorney contracts. Administrator Huel.
Board, good morning. You may recall, we have an obligation to provide attorneys for the indigent in cases of child in need of protection, termination of parental rights, commitment of sexually dangerous psychopaths, and child support contempt cases. We have bid those out. Different counties have done this differently, where a lot of counties are just hiring these attorneys on an hourly basis. We have historically not thought that was a wise way to do it. We have asked them to accept the cases that come their way for a fixed contract sum. And so we have bid these contracts out. There are 4 of them, and they range a little bit above or below, but on balance, they're mostly around $60,000. We've received notice from the 4 attorneys who we have under contract that, given the experience they've had with COVID this past year and the extra time and effort, that they are not willing to do the contract for 2021 at that rate. And so having conversations with them about that. And the way this system works is, I'm certainly no expert in the court system. And so I need help with the operational side. And so I consult with County Attorney Ryan on the operational side. On the financial side, the bidding side, because Don's the prosecuting attorney and his staff is the opposing attorney to these attorneys, then we build a firewall for the county attorney's office around the selection of and the price of. So Don's here today to answer any questions that you have about the operational issues with CHIPS, TPR, commitment, and I'm here to answer any questions you have about the financial aspects of it. So in approaching these attorneys about what the options are, it seems to me you really have basically 2 options. One of them is we can put these out to bid. The second one is we can do a one-time lump sum payment for COVID. And in my conversations with them, I think they're perfectly willing to accept that we could bid these contracts out. In those conversations, I'm pretty confident in also telling you that the requested amount that we have in the contract for COVID might not be the amount that they'll bid for the following years, because they initially thought this should be higher. And so I think that you have an option, and it's really a choice about which way you think is the lower risk option. And I don't have any corner on the market to tell you which way it's going to end up, other than my supposition is that a one-time payment will be more beneficial to us than an ongoing payment. And so what's being recommended to you today is to consider a one-time lump sum payment that would cover these attorneys for both 2020 and 2021 for the additional work associated with COVID. To give you some idea of how much that really buys you, it gets you about 120 additional hours, and that's at an attorney rate of $125 an hour, which is probably a pretty conservative rate. It gets you about 120 additional hours split between 2 years. And so if you think about what does that 15,000, what would it get you? It's 60 hours a year. I think that's a modest reflection of how much additional work that they are running into. They're running into work where we are behind on some of the cases that are going to trial, and Don can talk to you a little bit more about it. With the video conferencing, they also find themselves being the IT consultant for their clients, how to get their video systems to work. And so they've just, I suppose, like all of us, have experienced additional time and effort associated with the contracts. And so I'm looking for direction from you. Do you think the one-time lump sum payment is the preferred way to go, or would you prefer to see these go out to bid? If they do go out to bid, that's about a 2-month process, and that will back up the court system. I would expect that these attorneys will not be taking the cases during that bidding process. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
You noted in your email or the end of the week report last week that it's difficult to get attorneys to apply.
We have both of the last 2 times we went out to bid. We got 5 responses, and 4 of them we contracted with. And so I feel pretty confident in telling you we're going to see the same people come back with a bid if we go out to bid. And the question is, are they going to build this higher rate into the base? Because if they bid it into the base, then we're going to pay that amount from here on into infinity. My thinking was it would be better to keep them at the 2020 base and to pay them the one-time lump sum payment. We might still be going out to bid in 2022, but I don't think we would see COVID-related impacts in those bids otherwise.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Coring.
Mr. Chair, Tim, so you, at the beginning of your statement, you said that we are required to provide this service, and I would assume that it's state statute, it's state mandated. So I'm assuming that this is not levy dollars, this is dollars that were reimbursed, and if that's the fact, are we reimbursed for the amount that we spend?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, I do not believe that we're reimbursed for these. It is county general fund dollars. There might be some Title 4E reimbursement, but generally speaking, we put any of those reimbursements towards the out-of-home placement costs that we incur. I believe most of this is going to be at county cost.
County Attorney Ryan.
If I may, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, since I'm the historian, it seems, around here anymore. Back when I started practicing law, the county did do this on an hourly basis, and they contracted with local attorneys. You got appointed case by case. I know that because I had a bunch of those cases. And so we were paid $50 an hour back in the day. And then you just proceeded forward, and there were about 3 or 4 of us that did most of the work. After I was elected county attorney, Darryl Paskey and I, and actually it was Darryl's idea, he was then the court administrator, suggested that instead of doing the hourly rates, because people were just billing lots of hours, that we go out to contract and we do it on a salary basis. And when we did that, we recognized a substantial savings. I can't remember the year we did that, but it was a while ago, and we've continued that model forward. Roughly about 10 years ago, the state, prior to 10 years ago, roughly, whatever that date is, I can go look it up. I didn't prepare that for today. The State Public Defender's Office represented parents in CHIPS and permanency proceedings, and they decided they would no longer do that, basically because of resource and staffing shortages. Commissioner Francine, I'm not sure if you were on the board then or not. You were. So you remember that Crow Wing County said, we're not going to pay it. And we didn't for a while, which then created some issues. It created some lawsuits against the county. And then a judgment that didn't go in our favor at the district court level. The then senior judge in the district, Judge Maturi, ruled against us. The county then made the determination to pay everything but $10 of the arrearages, so that we still had a ripe issue to take to the appeals. But, in good faith, we did that, understanding that we may be seeking reimbursement. Rosemary, if I must speak, please correct me, but I'm pretty sure I got this ingrained into my head, because it's one of 2 times I've lost in front of the Minnesota Supreme Court. So So then we appealed it to the Court of Appeals and petitioned the Supreme Court to accept the automatic or immediate review, as well as Rice County did the same thing. And then we went up to the Minnesota Supreme Court, we argued it, we lost, and then we came back, and ever since then we've had to pay this. And Commissioner Coyne, I don't remember if you were on the board then or not. You may have been, or you may have come on right after that. But that's why we now have to do this, because the State Public Defender's Office said we don't have the resources to do it, and the Supreme Court said we have to, as a county, provide this service. And so I don't believe there is any reimbursement. I defer to Mr. Houle on that, Commissioner Coring, because that's his bailiwick, not mine. But I'm not aware of any statutory reimbursement for us for providing this service.
Administrator Houle.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, one thing did occur to me, however, and that is if this payment is COVID-related, then it would have been eligible for CARES Act reimbursement. Now, we know we don't have any CARES Act money left. It is potentially eligible for FEMA reimbursement. Now, I can't guarantee you that FEMA is going to reimburse it, but at least you could make a case that this is COVID-related, and it should be submitted for FEMA reimbursement. If there is any additional state or federal dollars that come through from an economic stimulus, and there is some discussion at the federal level about that, as long as it's COVID-related, I think it might be reimbursable. If we go out to bid and it becomes part of the established bid rate for CHIPS, TPR, commitment work, then it is going to be 100% county cost. So I can't guarantee you that it's eligible for reimbursement at this point in time. It may be, but I know if it goes out to bid, I'm pretty confident in telling you that any change in the contract rate will not be eligible for reimbursement.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Brackett.
Can I,
What
Sorry,
bucket, what bucket, oh,
Let's let Commissioner Coring finish.
finish up.
Commissioner Coring, go ahead.
well, just a couple of things. I don't know, this kind of probably sounds like a stupid idea or just a stupid suggestion, but okay, so if we're spending, what is it, Tim, again, about 60,000?
Correct. Each one.
Each one? What?
Each of the 4 contracts is give or take a little more or a little bit less than 60. They average 60, these 4.
You mean to tell me it's 4 lawyers times 60,000?
Commissioner
is
Coring
correct.
and Administrator Hu, I think you're talking two different things. I think Commissioner Coring, you're talking about the one-off dollars that would be given to these attorneys, and I think you're talking about the average that the contract is. Would that be true?
Well, how much is the contract, and then how much is this COVID money that they want?
So the annual contract for each one of them averages 60,000. There is, one of them is at 62, one of them's at 52, 2 of them are at 60. So it averages right around 60,000 for the 4 of them. This would be a one-time additional payment in addition to that to cover the 2020 and 2021 additional COVID-related costs. So it would add essentially $7,500 to each of these annual contracts for those 2 years.
Or a combined
Well,
total of 60,000, roughly?
The existing bidded contract averages 60. This would be on top of that.
Right. But cumulative, the 4 attorneys, the cost for those 4 attorneys would be 60,000.
That is correct.
Commissioner Coring, is that what you were asking?
Yes, that's what I thought. I said 60,000 times 4 attorneys. So I thought it was like 240,000.
Not the additional cost.
Right.
The base contract times the 4, and that's 60, unfortunately, is in both of these 2 maths. So I was confused. I apologize. 60,000
Oh, no.
average in the base contract times 4 contracts. It is 240,000 that we spend on the base contracts. The addition here that we're talking about would be 15,000 each times 4, which would be a total of an additional 60,000. Does that help?
And so what would be the total amount of levy dollars or general fund dollars then, just so I can understand this?
It would be 260, I'm sorry, it would be an average of 60 plus 15 for each of them.
Okay, total altogether.
For each
Tim.
of them, yep. So the base
Yeah.
contract is 60, the COVID additional payment would be an additional 15.
COVID for what? What's the extra cost? Why are they incurring extra costs? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, the one thing is we're backing up on child protection cases that need to go to trial. The other thing I think they're running into is it is taking them more time working through the court system with Zoom or whatever they're using. And they find, for instance, that they are also serving as the IT professional for some of their clients. And I think Don is probably even better qualified to talk about the operational issues.
Attorney Ryan?
Okay. Can I finish my question?
Go ahead.
Here's my dumb idea. Okay, it sounds like we're spending nearing $300,000. That's a lot of money. I'm wondering, is there, and maybe Tim or Don or both, could we create another department inside the county that is not part of the county attorney's office or part of anything else, and we hire on our own attorneys to be working and providing these services? I mean, it just, I don't know, I don't know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Do you understand my question on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, I haven't researched that specific question, but I think the answer is that we could do that. The question gets to be 4 attorneys plus their office expenses, housing, computers, phones, IT. You start adding that up and 300,000 isn't going to get us 4 attorneys.
Do we need 4?
But
Yes.
If we went,
need for, that's the thing. If we had this separate department, could 2 of these attorneys handle it at a lesser expense for us of those cases if they're specifically focusing only on this? I'm sure that these attorneys that are contracted, they're not just working on this, they're working on other cases also. I'd be surprised if they're not.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coring, they do not spend a great deal of additional time. This is their primary portion of the practice for these 4. I'm aware that Ray has a contract with the Public Defender's Office as well, so he's the one exception to that rule. But no, the others, in fact, dedicate most of their time to these contracts. In addition, there are conflicts of interest that come up. These are not the only 4 that we use for this. If all 4 of them have a conflict of interest, meaning they know the client, they may have represented the client before and the client says, I don't want him back. And so we do contract on a case basis with additional attorneys to do this work. And those conflicts, I presume, would still occur. And if you had fewer attorneys, they'd occur more often.
I think what I heard from Commissioner Coring is maybe he would like to hear more on developing that department and the cost in that. That's not going to answer the question that we're here today to answer, which is, in the short term, how are we going to handle the additional expense for these 4 attorneys? And so,
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner
Mr.
Coring,
Chairman,
go.
you're exactly right. And all I'm saying is, if this is, we've done it this way last year and we've done it this way the year before, can we ever think outside of the box of how we can provide these services at a lesser cost? Or we need to go to our legislative delegation and say, hey, we've got an unfunded mandate here that's coming off of Grandma Jones's property taxes. And to me, with this, like child protection or out-of-home placement, what happens if this starts to skyrocket and pretty soon it's not 300,000, but now it's 400,000 and 500,000 and it's spiraling out of control? I just think that, it's not for today, but I think we need to think of a different way to try to provide these services at a lesser cost. I think. Well, anyway, that's just my thoughts on this.
Commissioner Brecken, you had a question?
Well, I want to know, does this come out of the general fund expense, or what bucket of money does this come out of?
This does come out of the general fund.
Okay. And with that, how is this going to affect our current budget for 2021?
From the perspective of court administration, it would be a bump, and I don't believe that it is budgeted. From the perspective of the general fund, it's not material.
Okay.
Thoughts? Concerns?
I think our choice here, Mr. Chair, is really, do you want to go out to bid, or do you want to negotiate a lump sum payment?
Does Mr. Ryan have anything to
Pardon me?
share? Does Mr. Ryan have anything more to share?
Mr. Chair, I was just going to, in response to Commissioner Corrigan had asked a question on, I mean, what happened in 2020, if it was COVID that increased the workload or whatever. I can answer that, or I can sit down and be quiet and put my mask back on too. It depends upon what the board would like.
I'd
Go ahead
rather
and
listen.
answer.
I would like to hear that answer, Don, if you would,
Yep.
please.
So just generally speaking, there were a number of things in addition to COVID that played into the increased workload in 2020 for the juvenile justice system, if you will. So I'm going to make it just a little broader, and it'll all tie in. And that's going to roll over into 2021, and I don't know if it's going to go beyond that. So for instance, early on in 2020 when COVID hit and the adult criminal court was basically virtual, the juvenile court was still meeting in Crow Wing County in person, which created a lot of issues for the attorneys on both sides, my attorneys and for the people representing the parents and the public defenders representing the kids. And so in a child protection or permanency proceeding, you might, each parent, particularly if you're in a divorce situation or a situation where they were never married, gets their own lawyers. So you might have 3 or 4 lawyers representing parents and then another lawyer representing the children, and then there's a guardian ad litem appointed by the state, and if they want a lawyer, they get a lawyer too. We don't have to pay for that one. And so there can be a lot of lawyers sitting at the table and a lot of people in some of these cases. It doesn't happen in all of them, but it's not infrequent that that does happen. So then you have scheduling issues and who's going to get to sit where and how you're going to space it all off. So as they're working through that or try to address all those concerns, the juvenile court initiated weekly meetings or briefings amongst all the attorneys, and that occurred at first in person but then virtual. So in addition to their regular court work and their preparatory work and their meeting with their clients, they had the systems meeting that was going on. Well, then it got more complicated a month or so in because Judge Molly, who was assigned to the juvenile court that proceeds over all the child protection and permanency proceedings, went out on leave. And he's been out on leave ever since then. And so then we started rotating first judges from other districts in and then retired judges that were coming in weekly to cover the hearings. Well, that created other issues, you know. All these judges in different counties have different ways of doing things, which then created issues of who's going to draft court orders, who has to do this, who has to do the other things. So then all of a sudden these meetings, these weekly meetings, got a little more intense. And so for everybody, and so I'm not just saying it's just this one group of people, but for everybody, right? So then we were fortunate enough to have Judge Tennant come out of retirement and basically served out, I'd say, the second half of 2020, so to speak, as the judge in this area. He was used to our system, we were used to him, but in order to have that happen, my people had to agree to write all the court orders coming out of these proceedings, which was not something that is our obligation, nor were we set up to do. So they put in a lot of extra effort, but it supported the system. And then, but because of that, and then when Judge Tennant was there, you still had these weekly, sometimes 2-time-a-week meetings where the lawyers and the court administration are trying to work out. Commissioner Corrigan, I'm not trying to ignore you. It's hard for me to remember to look up at the screen all the time. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen, who's going to do what. And so that was almost I don't want to put in a percentage time FTE there because I don't know, I never looked at that, but it, for my people anyway, took a lot of time that was going away from the other stuff that they typically were doing. And then you get into, they eventually then agreed to go virtual. Well, a lot of these people didn't have a computer, so then the private sector, the people representing the parents, that's what we're talking about here, had to figure out, do their parents have a phone? Can they make an appearance via phone? But it has to be a virtual thing. They have to be able to see the judge, and the judge has to see them. It can't just be on audio call, right? So then they figured all that out and eventually worked through all of that. Right now, they're still meeting virtually. We have 10 backed up permanency trials, which is like a TPR or a permanent foster care placement, and we have 3 or 4 pending CHIPS trials. I anticipate all of these are going to go to trial in 2021, if in fact we get back to trials, because now the Supreme Court has decided, Chief Justice Gilday, no in-person trials until after, was it March 15th at this point? We have yet to try to do a virtual trial in the CHIPS courts, but if we're going to try to do that, then it's going to compete with the felony virtual trials that we finally have got up and running. We've had 2 of them now, because we only have 1 COVID courtroom and everyone has to be separated out. None of those discussions have occurred. In addition to that, with the Crow Wing County District Court bench has decided they want to restructure our scheduling system in 2021, and they want to eliminate the juvenile calendar. And so when we built our current judicial system, our building, excuse me, we have 1 courtroom that's specifically designed for these kinds of cases and nothing else. Well, you can put some civil stuff in there too, but we're supposed to be specially designed for this. And we had 1 judge that was going to always hear the cases. Well, now that's going to go away, and these cases are going to go back to the system I initially grew up with being an attorney, where it's going to be 1 judge, 1 family, and it's going to, so all these cases will be spread out on multiple different calendars. It's much more structured than that makes it sound, but you could have 4 different judges that are going to have these cases, and then depending upon the day of the week and what calendar these people are sitting on, then these cases will be put in front of that judge. And some of the concern, it's all speculative, is that in the little bit of extra time that these attorneys have, at least in 2021, while they're trying to figure this out, to do some private sector work, because Commissioner Corring, they do some. These are all solo proprietors, and so they don't have a lot of time to do more. That's going to disappear. And so that's speculative, and that's part of the bigger question. But for instance, in normal times, a TPR trial will be at least a 5-day trial with expert witnesses and everything, and that's not counting the time to prep it, and then the meetings with your clients and things like that. And so if these become virtual trials, I can tell you the virtual hearings are not as efficient as the in-person trials or the in-person hearings. It saves us money in that we don't have to bring an expert witness to town necessarily, but things start to slow down and back up when you're slotting things every 30 minutes or 15 minutes because the police don't go that fast or whatever would happen. So I'm just here to give you the background. As Mr. Houle said, this is a direct conflict of interest for me to get involved in contract negotiations with my opponents. And so, but they all know I'm here, and they know that Mr. Houle and I discuss the systems, and I'm his SME, so to speak, in that particular arena, or my people are. When he has questions I can't answer, I go to them. So if that just gives you a little bit of a flavor of what they're dealing with and what some of their issues are, strictly from the administrative management of the court systems from the attorney's perspective. And so with that, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I can answer any questions anybody might have, or I'm sure I bored you all to death already, but.
I think you probably talked way over my head. I don't know what the other commissioners feel, but I think that you have a good handle on it.
I thought he was filibustering.
What's that?
I said I thought he was filibustering, but thanks for the effort.
But I'm glad you have a handle on it and understand what's going on. My personal feeling is that the one-off payment of the $60,000 divided by 4 is the route to go at this time. I think in 2022, if we renegotiate those contracts, we'll be faced with whatever financial issue arises out of those at that time. So, other commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I guess I agree with you. I think that one-time payment, but I think Commissioner Corring's onto something too in regards to we should start looking at this and anticipating what could happen to us in the future and see what options we have.
I agree with Bill.
I agree, and I never want to go through what we went through then. One part that Don didn't talk about was the fact that after we lost at the Supreme Court, the commissioners were all issued subpoenas that we could either pay or go to jail. So So I'll pay.
Commissioner Coring?
I'll go to jail.
I think you have your direction then to move forward with this.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The next item on your agenda is to go into closed session, and it is for labor negotiations pursuant to, Therese, which statute?
So I would look for a motion to adjourn this meeting and go into a closed session regarding labor negotiation strategy pursuant to MS 13D.03 subdivision 1B.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Franzine makes the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Hoag makes the second. Therese, if you would call the roll call, please.
Commissioner Brecken,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag,
All right.
Commissioner Franzine,
Aye.
Commissioner Coring,
Aye.
Commissioner Barros.
Chair votes aye. We will take a few minutes to let Therese get organized over there, and then we'll be in closed session.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you,
Bye.
Don. No. But, oh, you have copies?